Okay, another set of changes. As you can see, well, this has been an ongoing thing for me over the last couple of years. I I really love this Morgan amp. I've also got my little bass breaker down here too to compare. I've gone through this journey of doing the amp modeler thing as well as most recently getting the Nano Cortex, which I captured this amp with. This is a Morgan PR5. And it sounds great. But what I noticed with the Nano Cortex, with my capture of this amp, because I'm very familiar with how this amp sounds, is doesn't really matter what guitar I'm using with the capture or with the Nano Cortex. Everything kind of starts to sound similar, or maybe I'm not so motivated to, play different guitars with it. Which made me circle back to, okay, I'm in a different room in the house now. I'm kind of further away from everybody's bedrooms. Can I get away with throwing a mic on this, putting it into the SSL6? And yeah, but I'd be pushing it. This house is it's a two-story house, but it's so open. The other house I was able to stay isolated. This house I cannot. So enter the whole idea of getting a reactive load box. I had never really heard or seen one that really struck me as worth giving a shot. But in this particular case, the two notes, you can buy it in 4, 8, or 16 ohm. The Morgan has, internally, it's set up with a 16 ohm greenback, but it has an 8 ohm output, which is what I'm connected to right now with the Torpedo. So I bought the 8 ohm only because I could have got the 16 ohm Torpedo, but the speaker out on the Fender bass breaker here is also 8 ohms, so I can switch between these two if I want that flavor, that little change in flavor. This one also has a built-in analog speaker emulation. I'm not a fan of IRs. And maybe it's just because I don't have a lot of experience with IRs. But in any case, with the two notes here, the Torpedo Captor 8, and I should also back up a little bit, of course. So my Morgan, the Morgan's kind of a love thing. It really eats tubes. I think I've had to replace 3 power tubes now since I got it, and I've had it for, I want to say, 4 years. So it's eaten a tube a year, and I think I've had to replace the rectifier tube once, if I remember correctly. I've done a lot of kind of research. I've even reached out to Morgan to talk about whether I should be using the standby or not. The Psionic Audio guy has really strong opinion on how Morgan has these things set up internally. He suggests not even using the standby switch. So right now, I'm not using the standby switch. And what do we got here coming out of the wall? I've got it down to 112 volts, and I just use my ears on that, but that's certainly going to put a lot less load on the amp itself. So hopefully I don't start blowing tubes with this experiment. As a result, I had to bring out some of my gain, which, believe me, doesn't bother me. I've got my NKT Red Dot, and I've got my Tim version 3. I still have my Chase Bliss Brothers AM if I feel the need, but in a general way, I'm a big Tim fan. I'm able to power this two notes with the phantom power off of the SSL6, and then instead of in series like I had it just going into a stereo channel, I'm just leaving channel 1 turned down, only because I'm using the volume pedal as expression from the HX effects. So I'm just taking the stereo send out into the HX effects, and then the Zoya's in the effects loop back into the stereo input here. So we're really just using the stereo channel here, even though it's the signal's taking a little journey before it gets there. But in any case, I'm going to mute this, and we're just going to do a jam. I'm going to use my my AHOT effect on the Zoya to make a pad. So there we go. This is actually kind of fun. I can finally turn my damn amp on. It's kind of irritating walking by all my amps and not using them. Hang on, I got pop-ups in my computer. Um, I love my amps. I want to use my amps. I'm a guitar player. Amps are part of it. The modeling works great, and it's been amazing discovering all that because all that was new to me. I don't want to say I'm an amp snob because I really don't care if it's tube or not. But in this particular setting, my tube amps I own are amps that I really love to play. So hopefully this, and I've only just got levels, so I haven't really heard it. So I'm really excited to listen back to this recording. So let's get a jam going. All right, so I got to say, it feels damn great. Everything kind of hooked up flawlessly. I've heard mixed reviews on the cab sim in here. It sounds fine to me. Again, of course, I have to listen back to the playback, which I will shortly after this is uploaded. But I got to say, this is the closest I've had in feel and sound to the way I know I like to hear this Morgan in the room. Fans not kicking in. I've been told by people, it sucks up. I mean, it's only a 5-watt amp, so it's not like I'm pushing this thing to the limit. So this isn't making any noises or anything. Don't think I have to flip the phase. Very quiet. It sounds every bit like my live amp, rather than, again, it's hard to describe the difference between a Capture, a model, and an amp in a room without being in the room with the amp, which is why I want to hear it back through the recording, because it may all sound the same through a recording, but it totally feels different in the room, if that makes any sense. So in any case, from what I'm feeling, and obviously I'm doing this for my own pure enjoyment, that was really enjoyable. Even if the jam wasn't the best one, I just pretty much just plugged this stuff in, got a level, and making this video as we speak. So I didn't even tune this guitar. I think it needs a little tuning. But in any case, there you go. 2 notes, Torpedo Captor 8 ohm, running my Morgan PR5 with the brown box. I actually get about 123 volts out of the wall, but again, this Morgan eats tubes, and I think it has partly to do with the design. In any case, I might have it tamed with the brown box. I don't think I've blown a tube since I started using the brown box, but if I do turn it on without using the standby, it does make some crazy noises. I did not catch that today. And again, I've only had this amp on a couple times in the last 2 years, and 2 of those times were capturing the amp, so I could, at least have what I thought was a sound. But I'm certainly going to try the bass breaker here. I think these things get a bad rap. I really like this little thing. The speaker in it's a little on the small side for what it does, but I'm real curious as to how it sounds through the Captor, because again, the bass breaker is kind of a JTM meets a Bassman, which are 2 of my favorite amp sounds of all time. So if I can get a little tube version of that, but I'm pretty sure the Morgan's just going to sound better in all cases. So there you go. I'm still not going to do a walkthrough of my setup, a deep dive. I know there's been a couple viewers that have asked for a walk through my creative process. I do want to walk through the foundation of what I do here is actually music theory. It's not gear. And I'd like to maybe walk through how I use the modes as a means to improvise on the spot. Again, I'm only trying to get in, get out real quick. I could certainly compose stuff. I have composed stuff. I've been doing this for many, many years, but that takes time. And one of the foundational things outside of the music theory is get in, turn it on, instant gratification, get out, which is what I have to do today. I got to get out of here. I got to help some friends. So, but in any case, I'm real excited to have this. First off, because I can use a couple of the pedals I'm definitely not going to sell. I've actually sold off most of my pedals at this point. So there'll be a couple other things maybe showing up in experiment here if I decide I like this Captor, but I think I really, really love this reactive load box. So having said that, there you go. Hopefully it sounds great. And again, here we are, and yet another step in the evolution of my little home setup here. So until next time.